Assalamu alaikum. My name is Nazim Baksh, and I am a journalist. I live in Guyana now. I used to be a journalist in Canada, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. I'm also a journalist in Guyana. I write a column for the Guyana Chronicle. We've been bringing you these conversations from time to time. I'm pleased to have with me Ustad Ahmed Hamid, an author, former imam or current imam. He's a principal of in Guyana with the school system. He has been an activist. He's been a former president of the Central Islamic Organization of Guyana. And now he's an author. And he's written this wonderful book, The Will to Survive, A History of the Muslims in Guyana, covering the period up till 1995. This is about 500 pages. This book is awesome. I'm actually looking forward to reading it. I've been hearing bits and pieces of this book from him in conversations in the last decade or so. And he's finally got it published. It's available on Amazon.com. And for those of you who are interested, if you're a Muslim in the diaspora in Guyana, in the Caribbean, or in Canada, United States, or the UK, you got to get this book. You got to have your children get access to this book. But I'm really happy and pleased that I'm able to speak to him in person. And here is my interview with him. Assalamu alaikum, Ustad Ahmed Hamid. It is a pleasure to be with you and to speak with you this afternoon with a book in front of us that you've written, and you've spent a lot of time writing this book, many years. What motivated you to write this book?
Thank you, Brother Nazim, for being here. It's a pleasure always talking with you. So many other things apart from the book, Guyana, our time in Guyana, working for CIG, you were with the Guyana Islamic Trust. When I went to school, primary school and secondary, we didn't learn anything about Muslims or about Indians. And I always wondered why. In the book we did at school, primary school, was called The Children's Story of Guyana. It didn't speak anything about Muslims. It talked about the Dutch, the French, the British, and slavery. And then after I started to teach, I came across many instances where we didn't know anything about ourselves, Muslims, so to speak. I heard tales about Muslims, what they did and they didn't do, but hardly any of those things could have been corroborated. Later on, I checked to see if there is anything whatsoever about Muslims. None. Guyana, University of Guyana, libraries, check on the bookshelves, and those days we didn't have internet yet. Nothing. So I decided to collect information on the Muslims, and I wrote a few articles. It's on internet. Formation of Islamic Association, the row, the split inside of Ranjuman. And then I started to figure out, look, it will be on the internet. People might not be reading it. Why not write something about the Muslims? Even if they don't read it in this decade, it will be there for others after me who will read the book and kind of figure out what happened to the Muslims from 1838 to 2000, the Indian Muslims who came from India. Then another thing, I never knew that there were so many Africans who were Muslims, and they came as slaves to Guyana, Caribbean, and America, and Brazil, until when Ghana got its independence. One day there was a guy named Miram Jadali. He gave a speech in our masjid. He didn't go to college. He didn't go to high school. He's a self-educated man, well-read. And then he was informing us, we were teenagers then, that there are thousands of Africans living in Africa who are Africans. They came as slaves, but they lost their religion as slaves in Guyana. So then in Saudi, as I go around, I picked up information here, a little information there. Somebody gave me a book, small booklet, another one gave me a piece of paper. Something told me then in 1970s, in the 1980s, collect these things, keep them. And then I started to make log entries, where I went, what I did. And I was showing some of it to my wife before I wrote the book, and she was laughing. You wrote those things to say yes. How much money we spent to build the Lenuru Masjid.
So I want to stop you there and ask you, sourcing the information is critical to an authentic writing of any book. And you're telling me now that you were collecting
Yes.
and documenting information long before you migrated to the United States.
Yes.
As far back as the 1970s.
My first entry is in 1967.
1967. How old were you then?
1967, I was just 23 years old.
Wow. And you're documenting, and you kept these.
Yeah, it's in an old red book. It was given to me by my father's friend, a man named Harry Rambaran. Two of them. One is a marble cover, and the other one is a red book. I still have them.
Wow.
I put them away. I still have them. Sometimes I go back, just going through memory lane, what it was like in 68, 69. And then, I began with the GIT. I wrote also Ahmad. So I have those, and those were very, very helpful in piecing together the picture that I want to paint.
Was there any period in time where, in the research that you did, there was a gap where you felt it difficult? Because part of it is the oral tradition, part of it is your own experience, part of it is double sourcing information. Because if you're going to, obviously before your time, in the 50s, the 40s, and the 30s, that you would find it difficult, because you don't have the personal experience, no one is alive to talk to. How do you then corroborate that material to make it solid, so that when you say it, it is a fact?
From 1838 coming on into the 20th century, there's lots of information. People wrote about Indians. A lot of the historians in Guyana, Dale Bisnard, Basil, Mangru, and all these guys, Totaram Mangar, they wrote. Peter Homan, your guy Dwarkanath. So you could pick up the information there. Lucky for me that coming into the 1930s, in probably, I can't remember exactly where, but I know the place, the county. I got a few books in Berbice, these journals, printed by Nur al-Islam. Nur al-Islam is the name of the journal, printed by Islamic Association. I got a few of those journals printed by Sadr Anjuman, not United, Sadr Anjuman. And then I was able to piece together the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. On the 50s, coming back this way, newspaper. You go to the newspaper, you get the information. The easiest period, I thought, would have been from 1979 to 1995. CIG was formed, GIT was in existence. The CIG had records before I left Guyana. I made sure that all these files, the correspondence, the minutes book, everything, they were in place. Lo and behold, I went back and I asked for these documents. None. What happened? Somebody told me, Brother Hamid, you know what they did? All these old papers, they consider them garbage. And so they did what they do with garbage. Other, Fazil told me, they stocked it at Mustafa's place, and the flood came, and the water, destroyed the papers, and they junked them. So I was really lost from 1979 to 1995.
But people would have been alive for you to talk to and
Yes.
get their oral tradition.
But when I did that, those people had died. When I started to do the actual, like what we're doing, the interview, those people passed away. Others, their mind kind of forgot and can't recall, even Moin Magdoum. Right now, there are only three persons alive from the original Savage gang. Myself, Brother Fazil, and Brother Moin. Even when I asked Moin Magdum, even when I asked GIT, they said, I understand that. The fire.
They had a fire.
They had a
yes.
fire. All the
Yeah.
thing given to them by Nasib and all the thing given them by Faisal. They were destroyed.
Yeah.
So I had to fall back on my notes. Some old Al-Bayan paper I picked up somewhere. Somebody told me, you know, but Ahmed, I have a copy of the Al-Bayan. I said, "Right." So that is how I was able to put together. And when I came back, my daughter, the youngest one, brought some papers that belonged to me. That if I had them, I would have included in this book. It is some old paper like the agreement made to work with Saudi from the Ministry of Education, my appointment to work with, things like that. But that was a difficult period.
There's a couple of themes that are quite important and relevant, and I'm sure you touched on them in the book. One of them having to do with political representation and how national organizations were formed to represent in the pre-independence period and then in the post-independence periods. Looking back, tell me first of all about briefly. I mean, I'm not looking for full history or full recount, but in terms of national representation at the national level, pre-independence, what struck you? What themes, what things that can we learn from this book?
Number one, the education and orientation of the Muslims in Guyana, those who even went to college, like Arbi Gadraj. They had a British orientation. Politically, they were always loyal to the British crown, the king. If you read their books, their literature, they're always, whenever there's an important occasion, they would turn to the British to solve their problem. That was their weakness. I'll give you one. They talked to the governor about passing a marriage law that will give the Muslims, the Maulvis, the Imams, the rights to become marriage officers and to grant divorce. They have it in Trinidad. Never happened. They depended on the governor again to help them establish denominational schools run by the Muslims where the teachers are paid by the government. It's in Trinidad. It happened in 1947-48. It never happened in Ghana because they depended too much on the British. They did not realize, like the Trinidadians, you have to agitate. You got to be assertive to the point of being demanding. They were not that type of people. Then in the 1950s, we found them to be subservient at a lower level to the British. Coming into the 1960s, many people, I wouldn't call their name on this program, many people whom we hold as heroes, they betrayed us. They signed a document and give it to Duncan Sands, the colonial secretary of the British Empire, that they approved PR. They signed it. And that caused Munir Khan, Razak Mandal, Muhammad Nassar, Safi, to move a vote of no confidence in the Sadr Anjuman's president, Abdul Majid. And they voted it, they won the vote, and in 1963, he was removed from office. I sometimes condemn Hussein Ghani. Then Hussein Ghani, his own admission, plus if you check the records, the release documents from the CIA, he took money from the CIA to fund Gump and to fight Chetty Jekin. He never, 1964.
64 first.
64, that's when he formed Gump. He got at the election 1,000 and something votes in 64, less in 1968. But he was bent on doing what he wanted to do.
And where did you source this? How did you source this?
Hussein Ghani himself, I interviewed him in 1992. and you go on the
And he admitted
he admitted that.
to taking money from the CIA
He admitted it.
or the American government.
Yes, he did.
Oh, that's
And when I was talking to Hassan, Hassan was telling me, I didn't have the proof then. Hassan told me, look, Uncle Hamid, you can't write that. I said, you agree, because I don't have the proof. But then when I check on the internet, all these different release documents,
Yes.
unclassified or declassified, you find it right there. Jainarayan Singh and Balram Singh Rai, they got 75,000 US per month
Per month.
in 1964 to ensure that the PPP and Cherry Jagan did not return to office. Now that is that part. Then by 1960, coming on to the end of 1960, Sararanjuman lost its impact on the community. It was like highly dysfunctional. Nothing was being done in the countryside, the rural areas, in the city, and at that point in time, the education started to go down. You will know that the education started to climb down, and less people knew about Islam, and just a few people could access information in Urdu from the Urdu text. They lost the language, by the way. Then 72, the split, PPP, PNC, Muhammad Nassar with the PNC group, Sararanjuman, Yaqub Ali with the Sararanjuman PPP faction.
One of the worst rigging election, 1972.
Then you come in 1985. Sararanjuman had been with the PPP from the inception of the PPP. Then in 1985, Abdul Rahman, yes, he flipped. He changed sides. He supported Bonham, and in the papers,
1985.
1985.
But Bonham died in 86.
Bonham died in 85.
85. Exactly.
He died in 85, then Hart took over, and the election was in 1985. The rigged election, the biggest rigged election in Guyana in 1985, and Sararanjuman supported it. But while I will condemn...
But by then it's a shadow of an organization.
Correct. It wasn't doing anything. It depended on political support. And when that political support was withdrawn in 1992, it folded up. By 2000, it no longer exists. Same thing happened to Jamiatul Mahideen of Guyana. Same thing happened to the Brotherhood. Same thing happened to BISA. All the organizations that depended on political support, they phased out. Lucky for Hifaz, they caught themselves up in time and decided Nassar is responsible for that, Muhammad Nassar. He told them, look, the only way you can survive, you got to join back with CIOG. So they went back to CIOG, and they're functioning up to now. And then the rest in 2000, well, that's outside the scope of the book. But come back to Gump. Hussein Ghani proved the point that it was a dire necessity, absolute, that the Muslims should be organized as a political force. I don't agree with the party part, and I will maintain that. There is no need to form a political party, but you need to form a political entity.
So I wanted to ask you about outside influences, ideas that were seeping through into Guyana, because I know you wrote about the Maulanas that came and the role they played in domestic politics in Guyana, even though they were visitors. The allegiance to India, to Pakistan. Pakistan is now aligned to the United States government. There's this anti-communism drive around the world. And here is Gump in 1964, 1968 election, and then it disappears. The Guyana United Muslim Party. So tell me about, just wrap that up for me, the formation of Gump, it's allegiance to the United States, influences of religious influences on the orientation, the ideological orientation of the party, and what happened to it.
The Guyana United Muslim Party was formed by Hussein Ghani. But before that, they had a Muslim something, I can't remember the exact name, a group that met at Muslim Trust College and they formed this Muslim society or group. Now, Hussein Ghani went to England and formed another group, another United Muslim group in England. Then when he came back to Guyana, he formed the Guyana United Muslim Party. Before Pakistan got its independence, it is written in black and white that all the Muslims in Guyana, the leaders, and even the rank and file, consider themselves to be Indians, and India was the motherland. And Urdu was supposed to be the language they wanted to speak and communicate with. But then the formation of Pakistan, there's a shift, psychological and otherwise, a shift to go with Pakistan. In speaking with the Pakistani ambassador, he said, listen, you people are from India. You go to India, not to Pakistan. And the Muslim couldn't understand that. When Sheikh Irshad Azmi was in Ghana for a few years in the 1980s, he said the same thing. I'm from Lucknow. You're descendants of people from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. Go to the Indian embassy in Guyana and ask them for assistance. I did. I went with Shahid. Nothing. Now, the Muslims in Guyana, if something happens and everybody got to go back to their country, where will they go? Pakistan? No. India? No. So where are we going to go? The outside influences in Guyana, the major influences came with the formation of CIOG and the formation of GIT. But I'll deal with more with the CIOG. We were isolated in Guyana, forgotten, not known by anybody. We operated on our own. For 100 years we were isolated. Our Urdu lost, we lost the Urdu. The Arabic that the people knew, that they learnt in India, when they came they taught it, but from generation to generation, the language become adulterated. We mix Urdu phonics with Arabic phonics, like Farz, Urdu means compulsory. In Arabic, it's farz. It has a...
There's no there.
Yeah. So, the recitation, everything gone. But then came this guy, Ustad Ahmad.
Yeah, before we get to him.
Yes.
So, Gump disappeared after the 1968.
After 1968, after 1964, 1968, Gump changed his name to Al-Mujahideen.
Al-Mujahideen.
Yeah, Al-Mujahideen, Jahid,
Yeah.
Mujahid, the jihad.
Yeah.
He told me that's a fighting name. Exact words. That's the fighting name.
Hussein Ghani.
Hussein Ghani. But Hussein Ghani was never recognized as a leader. Never recognized as a leader. And for you to have some amount of political clout, you either got to get prestige or you got to get money. And right now we see in Guyana prestige versus money. And what the results are. So he phased out.
So you go to the 1970s now, and Sadr Anjuman, the United Sadr Anjuman, is on a steep decline.
Yes.
Right? At the same time, you have this sort of dissipation of the Muslim community, people looking for identity. The new generation, my
Yes.
generation,
Yes.
starts to come of age. We're looking, there's what we call syncretism. You're mixing things, like you start seeing a national, this is
Yeah.
the first decade of independence in Guyana. We're all looking for a national identity, a spiritual identity, a religious identity, and all kinds of other identities. And boom, in 1977, Ahmed Ehwaz, the Libyan ambassador, arrives, fresh on the doorsteps of Guyana, delivered by Forbes Burnham at that time, right? And his allegiance to the non-aligned movement with Muammar Gaddafi. And here we have an ambassador, for the first time, a Libyan ambassador in Guyana. Tell me what you wrote about. Like, how did you cover that period? Because he was only there for 4 years.
There were people from Iran. There was an embassy in Guyana from Iran. There was an embassy in Guyana from Egypt. And this guy came in 1977. Everything has a way of happening. He was kind of exiled from his country. They didn't want him in Libya. He was considered a dangerous guy that could create problems for Muammar Gaddafi. Let's send him to Guyana, some backward state, nobody knows where. But Ahmad Abbas wasn't a man to be easily put down. He came to Guyana and he said, from day 2, he came today, from tomorrow, he began to work to change the structure of the Muslim community in Guyana, the perception of Islam, the perception of themselves, and what they could really do. It will never happen again. If you skip the couple of years in the 70s and go to 80, the 80s, this decade, was a golden age of the Muslims in Guyana. Ahmad Abbas was charismatic. He was highly intelligent. You know, he could do good profiling of knowing whether you have the capabilities or you don't have the capabilities, whether it's intellectual, academic, or character. And so he decided to make changes, not for the old people. The old people were really stones. You can't change them. Mm. You know, they had their biases and their prejudices, and they will not easily change. So he selected people like Nazim Baksh, Faisal Baksh, Nasib Khan, Abdurrahman Khan. He selected these young minds, pure minds, unadulterated. Open up, you could program it with whatever you want. And that is what he did. So those boys like you made the changes in Guyana that nobody else could have made. Mm. What that man achieved in 4 years, it will take anybody in Guyana right now a lifetime, and they might not able to do it. Why? Because the ingredients are no longer there. Where you'll find someone like Nazim Baksh or Nasib Khan or Faisal Baksh, where are you going to find them? Mm-hmm. Where are you going to find another Fazil Feroz? Where you don't have them in Guyana anymore. So what he achieved in 4 years was fantastic. Mm. And those people whom he trained, kind of oriented, and people might use different words, well, it was well done. Mm-hmm. And they carried on the thing. But they too were looking for an idea. They were fed up with this India kind of bias thing, this Indian kind of bias thing. Oh, this is tradition. And some of these traditions had no relevance to Islamic laws.
To at least the core of the Islamic law.
Yes.
They had a lot to do with the practice of Islam. Right. But nothing to do with the core understanding
not the core
of jurisprudence, theology, philosophy. It was just kind of the decorations of the religion.
And you don't blame the people too much. Yeah. As I said, you know, the education level at that time was really at its lowest ebb. Yeah.
But I want to ask you about that, because the 80s, you know, there were before he left, there were 2 one-year Islamic courses, full-time live-in courses, that altered the trajectory of religious learning in the country. And his whole program was about getting back to learning the essentials of Islam and practicing whatever little you learned, right? Whatever little you were able to acquire. And then you saw this ascendancy take place in the 80s. And I'm wondering what happened, right? How was that consolidated through the formation of CIOG and the establishment of the GIT? These 2 organizations are still around, less rivaling, more kind of collaboratively working together, but 2 different trajectories in terms of Islamic knowledge and understanding and practice of Islam. How did that come about?
You see, the younger people, in Saudi, there were young people too. And in GIT, most of the people were young teenagers and just in the early 20s, maybe a few in the late 20s. But Saudi had a very good plan of what they want to do and what they want to achieve. Those young boys who came to learn, they learned, but some of them were a little bit over enthusiastic. But nevertheless, their objectives were noble, and they did achieve their objectives. Going into Lenora Jamaat, for instance, you know, there weren't any objections to their coming, And that is where the women started to wear the hijab, to be in the hijab, and they had scarf and everything else. These brothers were dedicated. Imagine a man leaving his job. He's on the verge of being promoted, Abdulaziz. He left his job to go and attend the second one-year courses.
With me,
Yes. Those who went to those courses felt, to put it this way, it was God calling them to do something in Guyana that was necessary. They didn't look for money. They didn't look for to be given elevated status in our community. They were looking at the people whom they want to be more Islamically conscious. And the favorite word they used to use, cultivate taqwa, whatever it means to them. So they were able to influence people. And not only the father and the mother, the whole family were influenced. They did things that we never did before in Ghana, like a convention. We never had a Muslim convention in Ghana. They had the Muslim convention. They had liquors. We never had liquor. They had sleeping in. We never had sleeping in. The older folks gave no credence to the younger people. You're little, you're to be seen, not heard. Little boys, seen, not heard. But with this one-year course, they learned Arabic. The Arabic they learned even at the most basic level. The imams did not know. Oh, the imams will sing qasida, yes. But what if you have the knowledge? You don't have need for qasida. You can do your own, whatever it is. They knew the books. The information then that the old people used were written in Urdu, and if you don't have Urdu command, you can access the information. Ahmad was able to import books into Guyana. Forte Hadith, Muhammad Haikal, the thing, Fiqh Sunnah, Riyad al-Salihin, and I started off with Islamic focus, basic information. But the people whom he selected from his own assessment, they had the capacity and the capability to move from one to a higher stage. And any person or persons who can do that, they can make changes in the community. And that's what they did. They give a new interpretation to what is halal and what is haram, and what is tradition and what is culture.
But in doing so, do you think, how do you account for looking back at what sustained the religious life of the community from 1838 coming up to the 1970s and 1980s? That qasida, that Quran Sharif,
Yes.
that munajat, that ta'zim, that all of these things held the connection to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the love of the Prophet, the love of the family of the Prophet, right? And interspersed in all these occasions and events throughout the Muslim calendar, like the Muslim year, the lunar calendar. So why was that not factored in as something essential for the spiritual survival of the community?
From 1838, when the Muslims came, they brought with them their culture. Or, the process of integration, acculturation, some assimilation, that all was happening. But what they had, they were like, the plantations were enclaves. They were isolated, locked in to a system. How will they survive? And the book name is The Will to Survive. How did they survive? I like that point. How did they survive? They left their home. They were away from their family, alone. My granddad, he was alone. He was only 19 years old, unmarried, lived his whole family in India. How did they survive? There got to be things that will build the community, where we'll hold them together, and in the process, teach them about Islam. I mentioned to Brother Nazar Mustafa, me and I were talking, I said, look, you took away from the people Yom Nabi. You took away from them Milad. You took away from them Ta'zim. You took away from them Laylatul Miraj. You took away from them Shab Barat. You took away from them Quran Sharif. What have you left them with? You left them without anything. So what you expect them to do, they will find alternatives. And those alternatives are the one in Guyana right now that is causing the people to drift away from the basic teachings of Islam. Personally, Surah 17 speaks, Subhanallah, Allah celebrates the going of the Prophet from earth, from Makkah to Jerusalem, and up and down and back. What is wrong if I have something to recognize this? What is wrong if I sing a qasida? One man argued me, oh, the qasida is not good. Why? Because it's not in Arabic. So you know Arabic? I asked him in Arabic. Do you know Arabic? He can't answer. So, but you're going to sing a nasheed. You're going to sing an English song, but you will not sing an Urdu one.
Or
Why?
an Arabic song.
Or
So when you say take away, you meant take out these pegs, right? These were community pegs. So they took out the Milad, they took out the Quran Sharif, they took out all these pegs. So when you take these pegs out of the community, then the community doesn't have any anchors. It has no anchors, right? So it folds in on itself. And this is what you're seeing in Guyana. You still see community, but not the same strength, not the same
not the
cohesion
same,
that it used to have.
With the Milad, it wasn't just Milad. It was reading the poem and the prose and the poetry. And in it are hadith, in those verses or the writings of those people, hadith and Quran and the called nasihat, stories with high morals that influence people. Now it's not there.
There was one incident that took place in 1978, 79, 1980 that still drifts with the community, and every now and again you'll go to a masjid and it'll be the mihrab will be there, but then the lines would be in a different direction. That is the Qibla dispute that is still in the community. Do you address that in the book?
Yes. The Qibla issue came up first with Haji Mansour Ahmad Nasir. He wrote a paper and circulated it about the position of the Queenstown Masjid. And he argued that the masjid was not positioned in line with the Qibla, but it was so many degrees off. Because the masjid was then built according to the church street, parallel. And then a lot of people in Guyana were arguing they want to bring the compass to make sure the masjid was in position with the Qibla, and then one masjid in East Coast, I think it's Triumph. If you go in, the lines were drawn diagonal to the walls of the masjid. I went to one masjid, this was a joke, and I was laughing. They rebuilt the masjid. But after they rebuilt the masjid, then they realized that they did not rebuild the masjid to face the Qibla. So still in that masjid, there is a diagonal line. Sometime in the 1980s, Maulana Siddiq was in Guyana, and Hafiz Sultan Hafiz, Bisa, invited the Maulana, Muhammad Safi, Rauf Zaman, Nizamuddin, Maulana Siddiq to Wim settlement to discuss the Qibla issue. There, Maulana Siddiq explained, if the masjid is not directly in line with the Kaaba, the Qibla, but it is allowed a variance of so many degrees. That was then, but Hafiz Sultan never released the tapes because probably what was said was not in accordance to what he thought would have been the outcome. And now in Guyana, I think when they're building their masjid, they use the compass to make sure they face that direction. But at one time in the 80s, it was a big issue. You go to masjid, you see some people, some standing according to the line, and some kind of twist themselves always to the left, north, because they felt the masjid was not facing the right direction.
I have a contention in that I believe when you raise Maulana Siddiq Nasir and the effort that he made to bring what we call dalil, or the proofs, the legal proofs for the celebration of the Mawlid, for example, or the Mawlud, for the Qibla issue. Remember, he wrote to Maulana Maududi in Pakistan, and they got. I actually did see the fatwa where it talks about you know,
He got one from
the 90-degree
Azhar
allowance,
University.
and he got one from Azhar University. That the protests against what we would call traditional Islam, which is the Islam that our ancestors handed down as best as they could to us, was less about evidence and more about the fact that we are not Indians anymore. We're not Pakistanis anymore. We're more akin to the Arabs, whatever that means.
You know, well, you mentioned in the very beginning a struggle for identity. And it's probably harsh sometimes to say, but some of the boys then, they were kind of, they were ashamed of their identity being an Indian. I'm Indian, my grandfather is from India, I'm going to tell anybody I'm Indian. You know, the kind of inferiority complex. You will never be an Arab, you will never be accepted as an Arab. So in light of not knowing what the older folks knew and the biases and the sentiments of the older folks, the younger brothers believed in a kind of a way that they are within the range of the Sahaba. So they wanted to be the Sahaba. So they wanted to be like the Arabs, not Islam. They wanted to be like the Arabs custom, the Arab culture, the Arab traditions. But it didn't work. It didn't work because that was just a fad, a passing phase. Now you go back to Guyana, the last time I went with you, there's no talk anymore about opposing this and opposing that. In fact, many of the people I spoke with, they want to distance themselves from any opposition to Milad and Tazim and Shabi Barat and the normal thing. But the damages has been done.
In the book, you spend a lot of time and you create a narrative about the centrality and importance of your village, where you're from on the west coast of Demerara, Lenora. And I actually think that's a disservice to the immense work that Ahmed Ahwa, the foundation that he laid across the country from Essequibo to Berbice to Georgetown. I'm wondering how you justify placing your village as a central piece in the narrative of Islam in Guyana.
Good question. It is where it all began. This whole thing about changes, it all began right there.
Not because the president is from
No. It has nothing to do with the president. The president.
You're not trying to
right.
appease him.
If you calculate the age of the president in 1977, you got to know his age. Then look at me. 1977. You're talking about 48 years ago. President was around. Maybe now. No. The thing is because it all started there. Fazil father had left some money.
Fazil Feroz,
president of CIOG and president of the Muslim Youth Organization in Guyana. He was president of MYO first, and then he shifted to CIOG. And he had this money, and his uncle, his maternal uncle, Hamid Baksh, encouraged him to take the money and do something that would benefit his dad. So he came to hold a 1-week residential course. I tell you can't conduct a 1-week residential course. It's not going to work. What are you going to do? Anyhow, we did it in December, so it will cover the holidays, and then we extended to a month. The opposition to that from the traditional Muslims, fantastic. They came, they looked, we want to change the Quran. They wrote circulars, sent it out. Hamid is teaching this Arabic, getting invited to sub the tongue, and anyhow, it did. That is where Ahmad Ahwas came.
Yes. Well, we have the pictures of him
speaking,
and he handing out certificates.
Right.
And so on.
We invited him to the night of the graduation night, and he came and was giving out the certificates and the awards and so on. And shortly after that, we didn't end with that. Shortly after that, we had courses specifically for women. And that is when the introduction came to have women dress properly. Those of us who are old enough, you know how our mothers used to dress, how our wives used to dress, how the women used to dress. And that is where it all started.
Yeah, it was a catalyst.
Yes.
Rather than it was not the the driving force. It was just a catalyst.
Yes.
Things happened there,
Yeah.
and we recognized that. But what happened after that was that the
Well,
entire country literally
Yeah,
came alive.
I mentioned the course in Visa, which you attended.
Yeah.
I mentioned the trip to Anna Regina. They nearly beat him up because he read the Salatul Witr and he used a different dua qanut. And he raised his hand and he recited the Lord, and that people felt, wait, this namaz is all wrong. But anyhow, he pacified the situation. I mentioned Kayuka. I mentioned the 2 one-year courses. I mentioned his involvement with the Majlis Shura. I mentioned his involvement trying to reunite Sadr Anjuman twice at his consulate. And in one instance, he got Rabita to send a special envoy to see if they could bring the 2 factions together. They agreed in principle. They signed. But after they left, they violated it. They reneged from the agreement. I also wrote that he was able to get Muhammad Ali, boxer, Cassius Muhammad Ali.
With Warthaddin Mohammed.
With Warisdin at the at the consulate where we went after the one-year course. Everybody joined the bus. We drove up and we met Muhammad Ali sitting downstairs in a sofa. What else I mentioned? Let me mention this.
Yeah.
I mentioned also he was a man who thought, to my mind, that Guyana was the right place to start something that can evolve into a Muslim, bigger institute than the institute they have now. It would have been an institute or an institution that will invite people from the Caribbean to come, because he bought the building in Queenstown to have a Muslim center, cultural center. We call it the Libyan Cultural Center, but that
Which failed.
failed
Yeah.
because he left.
Yes.
The people in the embassy had no interest. The people who were placed in charge, they saw it as means of, it's a sad story.
Yeah.
We lost it.
Every author has a vision of where they like to see their work go, and I'm really proud of you and happy that you wrote this book. What's your expectation in terms of your contribution to this particular genre of literature?
The reason why I wrote the book and spent nearly 40 years collecting information, reading and writing, sometimes I wrote a whole chapter and it's garbage. Throw it away, it's no good. It doesn't bring out what I want to say. I've written it with the intention that people like yourself and others will read it. One brother commented that when you write the book, when you know the book itself, the language is not simple. I tried to write it as simple as I could. We couldn't. So the way it is, I did say it's a groundwork, and maybe other people after me will use it. They have the right to criticize if they don't agree. Of course, you can criticize it, but I ensure that whatever I wrote, I can back it up with references, with facts, so that you're not going to tell me, look, this is not true. You may say it is not true, but the facts will show otherwise, that what I've written is true. It is. Maybe people after me will write something taking out a part of it. Maybe, like, for example, maybe someone will come and say, look, let's talk about GIT. Okay, let's talk about Sadr Anjuman. A whole volume on Sadr Anjuman. That's up to them. But there is a work, I hope, can be used by people for reference, maybe do their research, and it's something that will really benefit the Muslims.
Yeah. Ustad Hamid, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you so much for this discussion. It was lively. I enjoyed it. So much more I want to talk to you about, but I want to debate you. I don't really want to ask the questions. But I really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to reading this book, and I'm sure others in Guyana, in the diaspora, in England, in the United States, in Canada, and wherever Muslims now reside after leaving Guyana, to build a better life for themselves, will think about what they have left behind and perhaps what they can still contribute to the Muslims living in Guyana, to the people of Guyana generally. And this book is certainly a valuable contribution to that narrative. Thank you so much, and may Allah be with you.
Thank you, Brother Nazim. It was nice speaking with you, and I enjoyed talking about my book.
Yeah.
My grandson bought a copy, and his mother told me he's reading, and his pages become very colorful, using yellow markers, using green markers, and everything. And my granddaughter, whose name is mentioned, she was the one who always pestered me about, Grandpa, what was your youth like? What was your life like? How did you meet Grandma? How did you marry Grandma? What did the Muslims do? And this book is for not only our generation, but for the younger generation and generations to come. It's always a pleasure talking with you, and I always enjoy talking about my book.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nazim. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
All the brothers who are responsible for this interview.
Thank
I
you.
hope we can talk again when I come to Guyana about other things.
Inshallah. All right.